All right, let's go to a very depressing room because we had very low grades all across the board here. And I'm going to start on this one. I went with an F, and I'm basing that off of this is one of the worst tight end rooms in the NFL, personally, I think, just based off of last year and just historically over the last couple of years. We all know I'm a big fan of Jatavion Sanders, and I do think he could break.
Not anymore, you're not.
Well, clearly not, but I do think he has potential to become a 500-yard tight end, and this might allude to what we talk about later with that question. But it's so unknown with this team, in this position in general. They can never figure out this room. They never have. And every year we hear it. Every year we hear, or I hear at least, it's Tommy Tremble's breakout year. And we are still sitting here, and the guy just had back surgery and is probably not going to be ready to go week one. So
Bryson was holding up his phone finger there to tell you he's the number one fan.
Every year I hear, I know who he's talking about. And
no, it's not even you. There's many people on Twitter that say the same damn thing. It's Tommy Tremble's year. It's Tommy Tremble. We hear it all the damn time. And it reminds me of 80, that I'm not going to say his name. It was, he's going to break out. He's going to break out. And that just never happened.
Y'all are so hateful tonight.
And then we have a rookie in the room. And then behind that, there's really no one. I didn't want to put anyone else's pictures up here because I didn't think they're worthy enough, to be honest with you. So you have Tommy that's coming off of back surgery. You have a rookie they drafted in the 5th round, in Mitchell Evans. And then you have JT Sanders, who statistically had the most yards for a Panthers tight end in the last 5-6 years. And I haven't checked 80's stats a couple years ago, so it might be a little bit is not as long as that. But anyway, nonetheless, he's had more yards in one season than Tremble has ever as a Panther in a season. So I think he has potential, but this room is just, until they prove that they become reliable, I have little faith in this room. Even though I do love Jatavion Sanders. I really do hope he breaks out. I think it's because he's something new. He adds a little bit of different element to this room as a catching tight end. And that's, I think, why I'm so just hoping and praying something he flourishes, because we need it. We really do need it in this room. But yeah, I'm always been down on this room. It's so disappointing because I just would love a Greg Olsen type guy, and it hasn't been there.
Yeah, I mean, this room is sick and not in a good way, right? It's like throw up sick, not like, whoa, that's sick, dude. I think there's potential here. I really do. I think if Bryce Young continues to take a step, which I wholeheartedly believe that he will, the tight ends will be involved at a higher level in the offense. It's just going to be up to them to perform when they're called upon. And I think you mentioned it, Curtis, JT Sanders this offseason, I mean, we've seen the videos. He looks good, right? Does that translate to higher level of play on the field? We'll see. But he looks like he's moving better. It looks like he's dropped some weight, and he's looking like a wide receiver almost out there. Tommy Tremble coming off surgery. I still believe that Tommy Tremble has some ability to be an effective tight end in this league. I know Curtis is probably throwing up, but I think he does. He's played with – most of his career has been with subpar quarterback play. The best quarterback he's played with is Bryce Young the last 10 weeks of last season. And – of course, JT Sanders benefited from that in his first season, playing with Bryce Young at the highest level he's played at in the NFL. But I think that's the best that Tremble's had as well. And I think that, Tremble could end up with the most yards out of this group if he is healthy and stays on the field. But this is just a group that is not great right now when we're looking at it going into the season. They do have promise. I think Mitchell Evans is a little bit of a question mark. Can he be an effective tight end? We hope so. We hope he's involved in the passing game. Coming out of Notre Dame, he looked like a decent prospect, and there's just a lot of question marks. So I went D+. I wasn't as low as Curtis with an F, but D+ I think is a fair grade for this room.
before you go, Ricky, your grade just does not match up for me.
I know.
I'm sorry, because you are probably the hardest person in this on this show of the tight end room.
Yep.
And I'm probably the most optimistic. So, like, both of our grades make no fucking sense. Yep. We should almost flip.
I know it. Look, I saw this the other day, man, and it's hilarious because this is, Curtis, when you sent this over to me, right? Like to send our grades, whatever, for these position groups, I sent you my grade over. And later that day, I saw somebody, I think it might have been Nate Tice or somebody that was doing a big show, right? And they were talking about this tight end room, and they said, this might be the worst tight end room that I feel okay about that I can ever remember. And I agree with that 1,000%. I didn't know how to like word it, but this is probably the tight end room out of all the NFL that I think on paper just looks god awful. I mean, like, just terrible. You look at the production. You mentioned it, Curtis. I think that Tommy Tremble is flirting with Ian Thomas territory. Like, I really just think there is no way around this, because every single season it's this, hey, he's going to show it. He's going to show it. We see flashes. It's going to happen, right? Like, it's going to finally happen. He was drafted in the third or fourth round. Tommy, I believe, was the third. Ian was the fourth out of Indiana. But, like, the same type of draft allocation, right, capital-wise, skill set. They kind of were supposed to have the same thing, where they're these big-bodied, strong dudes, can catch the ball, but they could block. And it just hasn't happened, man. Tommy is a fine blocker. I will say that. And I always liked his appeal as a 12 personnel guy. He doesn't need to be your number one tight end. He doesn't need to be your pass catching weapon, right? He's not even Kyle Pitts as a pass catcher, and Kyle Pitts isn't a very good pass catcher. But, like, it's a difference there. Ja'Tavion Sanders is the big wild card here for me, and it is the C- for me. And I'll get to Mitchell Evans as well, though, because I was also higher on Mitchell Evans pre-draft and thought that he was a great fit here in Carolina. And that also raises my weird expectations, if you will, for this room. Ja'Tavion Sanders trimming down, getting more athletic. They're not going to ask him to be an inline blocker very often. That's not going to be the ask for JT Sanders. I don't think they have any interest in making him do that. I almost look at JT Sanders and see, you know who Dave Canales saw for a little bit in Seattle, who I think I can see JT having a similar like effect as? Noah Fant. I think that he could be this move tight end. I think he can be a chain mover. I think he can work the seams. And I think that he could be a possession guy in the red zone if you absolutely need it, or if you could scheme him up in there. I don't ever think he's going to be a primary target. That's okay. I don't think you need that right now in this offense. I think that the way that Bryce Young wants to distribute the football anyway, I think that the tight end position is not going to be a go-to for him. I think that he's got a lot of weapons to play with. And maybe not all dynamic weapons, but he's got a lot of weapons that serve purposes, man. It's like the toolbox, right? He's got the Phillips head. He's got the flathead. He's got a hammer. He's got, you know, every single thing that you could want for the toolbox for him to kind of like craft up his art. Ja'Tavion Sanders is just another tool in that box. But if him and Mitchell Evans can work together, and I think Mitchell is, I feel crazy, man. I feel like Bill Murray and Groundhogs Day saying this shit, but like I feel like he's what Tommy Tremble was looked at as supposed to be, where he can be this good blocker. He can also be this solid receiver. He's a fundamentally sound player again. He's not Tim Duncan, Bryson, or Curtis, whatever. It was Bryson that said that. You called Josie Jewell Tim Duncan. That was crazy. This has been a nuts episode, first of all. It's been crazy. I don't think he's Tim Duncan, but he might be Al Jefferson, for crying out loud. He might be the same guy that can stitch you up down low on the block with some good footwork and give you 25 on a season. He's not going to give you much defense, but there's things. Mitchell Evans and JT Sanders, I think, can play really well together. And I don't think that Dave Canales has any interest in highlighting and focusing the tight end position. I think he's looking for his Cade Otton. I think he's looking for his Noah Fant. And why the heck can't JT Sanders and Mitchell Evans and potentially even Tommy Tremble, if you want to get nutty about it, why can't they be Cade Otton or Noah Fant? We're not asking them to be Travis Kelce. We're not asking them to be George Kittle. We're not asking them to be Dallas Goedert, for crying out loud. We're asking them to be serviceable tight ends in the NFL. And I do think that they can carve out roles and be serviceable at their roles. But it is going to be a to be determined situation. That C- was the weirdest thing I've ever had to do because I wanted it to just be, I wasn't going to go F. Like, I'm not a Bond villain like Curtis up there. Like, I'm not, like he loves to just like, man, he loves to crush dreams, dude. Like, seriously, he's got like the Freddy claw that just comes out from under the bed and stabs everybody when they're sleeping. You're like, I'll just ruin your dreams. I'm not that. But, maybe I'm like the guy in the Strangers movie or something where I knock on the door and I terrify you a little bit. I might run away, though, eventually. Like, it's not that bad. It's not that awful. But it feels like the same thing over and over and over. So this is like the Groundhog's horror version for me. Any of that make sense?
Yes, it did. With that, though, the question, and I've kind of alluded this, I do think, despite my awful grade, that JT Sanders could get above that this year. I mean, without the injury last year, I think he was on pace to get there, honestly, if he hadn't, landed on his neck in that Chiefs game. And then, Adam Thielen coming back after injury. So I do think there's a chance he could. And I think it's even more likely with Tremble out. If Tremble starts the year maybe on IR where he's out the first 4 weeks type of situation, I do think Tremble can get really close and top that number. What do you guys think about that? I think he had like 343 yards last year. I'm not counting at all or anything.
I think if everyone's healthy playing the full season, I think Tremble is the most likely to go over 500.
I think that when I look at it,
you're smoking something. Go ahead, Ricky.
I think that when I'm looking at it, and I'm going to talk about the two guys that I just spoke about, right, in an offense for Canales. Cade Otton in 2023 had 455 yards, 4 touchdowns on 47 receptions, and he was pretty involved there. Last year he had 600, but Dave Canales had nothing to do with that. Seattle 2022, Noah Fant had 486 yards on 50 receptions, 4 touchdowns. So I think what I see when I look at this Canales offense and what I look at what he wants to do with tight ends, they might see 45 to 50 receptions, but I don't see any of this being big plays and primary focus. So 500 yards is, I think, the peak of what they could get. I would be shocked if it is anything significantly over that. But I also think that you could see JT Sanders get 450. I think you can see Mitchell Evans get 300. And I think you see Tommy Tremble pop in with a nice Ian Thomas, 172 or something like that, right? So maybe collectively,
I'm loving this Ricky hate on Tremble tonight.
No, it's not hate on Tremble, but like I've got serious worries about the way they've worded the thing with Tremble with his back injury. I have serious concerns that he's not going to make it through this year.
I mean, they said he'd be ready for training camp, and now he might be ready for preseason, and now it's we've seen this many times.
They're really hedging their bets, man. Like they're really hedging their verbiage that they're using with Tremble so that they don't have to like remove their foot forcibly in front of everyone out of their own mouth, because they know that there is a serious chance that Tremble is going to deal with this all year. I think that's what I'm looking at more. Is even if he's ready, this may be a situation where flare-ups happen on a consistent basis, and maybe he just doesn't see the field. But also, if he doesn't, man, I don't think that he's going to be back. I think that they're going to move on from Tommy Tremble. I think this is the year that they find out, is this dude part of our future? And I like Tommy Tremble. If there's one thing you can always set your clock to, it's that Tommy Tremble's going to try to hurdle somebody, whether he's got business doing it or not. That man is going to try to hurdle you. Oh, yeah. And it looks cool as shit every single time. So I give him credit for that. And he is a fiery player, man. He is always one of the first ones in the pile to pick up the running back after he is tackled. So, like, this is not me knocking Tommy Tremble, dude. I like Tommy Tremble as a player. I like him in the locker room. I think that he's a good football player. I think he's had really poor production. And at some point, dude, production matters. So that's just it for me. But I think that collectively they could get to 600.
You don't think he gets a pass for the way a tight end gets production is the level of quarterback that he has to provide that production, because he can't throw the ball to himself.
Right.
Tommy Tremble has played with piss poor quarterbacks throughout his career in Carolina. Even Bryce Young's first season, we all know, was bad. And then the final 10 weeks of last year is when Bryce Young took that step, and we all believe that, the sky's the limit for Bryce Young from here on out. But Trimble hasn't had good quarterback play.
Yeah.
Would his stats look different if he was playing with a higher level quarterback to begin his career?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. And I love that kind of debate, honestly. Like, I think that that's a really fun debate because it starts to get into the nuance of the player himself and like what they do well and what they don't do well. And for me, the underlying part of that debate is always, and I'm going to go back to Terrace Marshall Jr., because this is what Tommy Tremble reminds me of, is with Terrace Marshall Jr., wherever it says, dude, what if Terrace Marshall Jr. was just given more opportunities? What if Terrace Marshall Jr. had a better quarterback? Like, he flashed on a couple games. Why did he not get more opportunities? Well, he couldn't beat out the guys that weren't good at football. You know what I'm saying? Like Tommy Tremble played behind Ian Thomas. Like, he played behind Ian Thomas. I'm going to keep saying that over and over. And I'm not saying 80. He played behind Ian Thomas.
80.
Right? So, like, that's a problem. Is it not? That he couldn't beat out the guy that, like, was untouchable somehow? Steven Sullivan was getting looks. They were literally bringing in Steven Sullivan and Jordan Matthews to play tight end because Tommy Tremble wasn't the answer for them. Right? I mean, I get what you're saying too. Like, better quarterback, better offense, better offensive line. 100%, man. I think he probably would have had at least 275 to 300 yards. Totally. But I think that's still it. Like, I just don't see when I look at Tommy Tremble, and I know, like, there was, who was it? Was it Matt Miller or somebody that said he had George Kittle as his comp? I think that plagues Panthers fans' minds because I think we saw that name compared to Tommy Tremble pre-draft. Once you see something like that in your brain, dude, there's an association that happens where you're like, dude, he can get there. He's got that. Like, he can get there. And I'm guilty of that shit, man. I talk about Nick Scorton. I mentioned Terrell Suggs with Nick Scorton. So in my brain, I could see it every single time. I'm like, man, he better ball out. Like, he better go nuts, or I'm going to look like the biggest stooge in the damn world. Like, I get it. But Tommy Tremble, man, when he's on the field, think about the touchdowns, right, that he dropped the Detroit Lions game. Just dropped it. Pinpoint accurate pass from Bryce Young. Dropped it. Does he need better quarterback play to catch that pass? Or does he need better hands to catch that pass?
That was one instance.
Ricky's doing my dirty work tonight. I love it.
I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, it. If he had a quarterback that put him in that position more often, would he have caught that? I don't know, right? Like, if he was involved in the offense at a higher level and more comfortable catching a touchdown and having that opportunity,
and he wasn't a prolific pass catcher coming out, right? Like, they always said that. Like, he was a better blocker. So, like, we should have. This is something he should get credit for, Bryson, and I think you're right on this. He came out and said they didn't develop me for 2 years. There was no development. And so that sucks. But now, and I get it, man, the Frank Reich thing went fucking awful. It was like the Voyage going down to look at the Titanic, right? Frank Reich was like that guy. Yeah, he was like, hey, jump in this fucking soup can with me. We're going to go look at the fucking, heart of the ocean. Like, let's go down there and hang out and listen to Celine Dion or whatever. Like, I get it. Like, that all went so bad. But at the same time, it was still an NFL coaching staff. Right? Thomas Brown, we all talked about him and his ability to connect with players. The tight end coach was the giant, tall dude out of Stanford, right? Or no, that was the linebackers coach. I forget who our tight ends coach was. But, like, we had an NFL staff. And then this past year, again, dude, we saw development from many other young players. And we give Tommy a pass, too, because he's still relatively young in age. But at some point, dude, like, he's been in the league for long enough that he should pick something up. And I'm just not seeing individual progression. Look at his routes. He's not a super fluid athlete. He's not supposed to be. But, like, that's part of it. His blocking, I don't think, took the next level either. When we had to question who was a better blocker, Ian Thomas or Tommy Tremble, and then we had, like, a mid-off when you go through all 22 of looking at their blocking, right? Like, you look and you're just like, that's a missed assignment. That's a missed block. That's a whiff. He's late on that. He doesn't know where to be on that. It's really difficult, man, to find a way to say there's not some individual accountability for Tommy, in my opinion.
Well,